In this video, you're going to learn the 3 communication mistakes that I fixed in order to double my monthly paying Patreon subscribers. You're probably making these mistakes too without even realizing. So by fixing these 3 communication mistakes, this is what's going to allow you to turn your passion into profit, even if you've not started your side hustle yet.
Do it now!
Even if you're starting your side hustle with no money.
This time next year, we'll be millionaires.
Or minimal resources. And even if you're not even sure what skills or ideas or services you could even monetize into a side hustle. If you stick to the end of this video, I'm going to give you a free resource that has only been previously available to my paying Patreon subscribers.
It could be anything. It could even be a boat.
Mistake number 1 is not capturing people's attention. In Chris Fenning's book, The First Minute, he introduces a term from the United States military: bluff. Bottom line up front. If there's ever an issue with your car, you don't want to know the intricacies of how the parts work together, how they might complement each other, how long it's going to take to order. All you want to know is how long is it going to be before your car is roadworthy and how much is it going to cost you. For platforms like Patreon, you can afford not to be at the mercy of the YouTube algorithm that punishes you for people who disengage from your content early. But for YouTube, you need to dangle that carrot and take the guesswork out of the what's in it for me question that your audience will inevitably be asking. Mistake number 2 is losing people's attention.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
And I like to think of this in 2 parts. Part number 1 is being memorable.
I think to be really memorable, it needs to be intellectually confounding or challenging, right? And it also has to target your emotions on a very, very extreme level.
And when it comes to making your content more memorable, on some level, it needs to be surprising. Key information can be defined as that which surprises you. Because if you're not surprised, then you already knew it at some level. So you're not going to force people to psychologically or otherwise take note of your content. In order to make your content noteworthy, you need to be using, for example, coaching cues that are funny or at the very least visceral.
Goes out, pivot out, doesn't matter what side you're in, pulls out.
And what goes in?
Pivot out.
And learning how to tell a good story is
one time at band camp.
Something that I'm going to be working on in future months to help me with this. For example, in this video of a split squat, rather than saying gently drop the back knee, I could have said kiss the baby's head with your knee, but don't make its skull burst like a starburst. Coaching the pivot in boxing is something that Barry Robinson has somehow turned into a way of demonstrating his understanding of how to be memorable with his coaching cues. Next, we have not being forgettable.
I can't remember what I've forgotten.
When it comes to being forgettable, this is anything that can cause your audience to switch off. For example, overly long introductions.
Hi, my name is...
At the start of your video, a blurry camera lens, using redundant words that actually add nothing to your articles or videos.
People wind up Jonathan.
It's people who literally misuse the word literally.
Basically, actually, very literally. Constantly ask yourself, what am I trying to say and have I said it? My final favorite bullet point under the umbrella term of not being forgettable is something known as font pairings. Brace yourself for a quiz question.
Who knows what an onomatopoeia is? Raise your hand if you do.
The question I have for those of you still watching this video is, do you know what a font actually is?
What has that got to do with anything?
Okay, maybe you already knew what a font was, but the bigger question is, why does it matter? Over to typography fanatic Mia Cinelli for her TED Talk on why typography matters.
So you get online, you look up babysitters, and this shows up.
Poor font pairings make it difficult for the audience to know, either consciously or otherwise, what is the key part of your message that you want them to zone in on. After all that advice, I'm going to contradict myself and say that if you want to get better at creating content, ignore everything that I've just said and focus on consistency instead. At the start of your podcast, your YouTube channel, writing articles, no one is watching or reading the content anyway.
I feel like I can sell, and I know actually I can sell, so it would have been nice if
How many did you sell then?
I sold 0, but
No.
I was...
So you can't sell?
No.
Take the readers or the viewers on your journey with them. Let them see how your podcast, your article, your website has progressed. I really enjoy looking at content or creators that I used to follow when they had limited number of subscribers and learning from them to see what they've added into their videos. Ultimately, if the core concepts of what they're actually saying or doing have value, then you're still going to engage on some level. It's still going to be worth revisiting. So whilst it can be overwhelming to think, what microphone do I need? How do I get my lighting setup correct? For example, I'm just using a lamp on my face. So my March Show Your Work episode is going to be focusing on me learning more stuff about that in terms of videography. But if the key message is there and it's valuable, people will almost enjoy seeing your content develop and improve over time. But the only way you're going to get better at your content creation is to force yourself to produce it on a regular basis. The only way you're going to get good at producing videos is to commit to doing this regularly, regardless of the quality. You're only going to learn what to do next or what to learn next by taking care of what you need to know now. For example, those of you who are watching this on video will notice that I've now got a reflection from the lampshade that sat a foot or so in front of me, reflecting on my glasses. So now I know what I need to do next, but I'm still going to put this video out there because it's going to hold me accountable to learning that. Mistake number 3 is not leveraging your uniqueness, or as Naval Ravikant terms this, specific knowledge. Specific knowledge is knowledge that you cannot be trained for. If you're sharing your life experiences, who can possibly compete with you on that? Who can compete with Joe Rogan, for example? If society can train you, it can train someone else to replace you. So you need to leverage your unique strengths or your unique experiences. For example, in 2016, I was part of the 2016 strength and conditioning team for Olympians of the GB boxing and GB Paralympic table tennis teams. But I'm also a qualified PE teacher who's worked in private schools and public schools. As an accredited strength and conditioning coach, I've also been fortunate enough to produce research on Middlesex County Cricket Club.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
And even though strength and conditioning is my passion, as a former amateur boxer, PE teacher, and strength and conditioning coach, I know the realities of working in these environments beyond what a textbook or lecture on program design could ever teach people. Now, common knowledge says to focus on niching down. My good friend Rob Anderson, who is the 8th guest on my Platform to Perform podcast, told me I can't ride 2 donkeys with one ass. So in summary, choose your donkey wisely. So how am I applying these lessons that I've spoken to you about in today's content? At the start of this video, I attempted to use what Pat Flynn calls his tiptoe framework. That's a title-based intro. So you would have heard me say, in this video, you will learn the 3 communication mistakes that I fixed in order to double my monthly paying Patreon subscribers. So you've got your title-based intro. You've got your I, which stands for in this video. P stands for proof. So those of you watching this on YouTube will see that in my previous Show Your Work video, I was on 3 Patreon subscribers, whereas I've hit lofty heights of 6. Annoyingly, I didn't film I didn't screen record the snippet of when I got my 6th Patreon subscriber. So it looks like I'm currently on 5. Then T stands for tease.
Naughty, naughty, you're teasing me.
So something to force people to stay or engage in your content for longer. So if you're still watching this or listening to this, then you can email me at platformtoperform@gmail.com for your free copy of Anti-Perfectionism. The O is objections.
Your Honor, I object!
So when people watch your video and they think, I'm not sure if this content's for me, this gives you a chance straight off the bat to knock those objections out of the park. So for example, at the start of this video, I said the 3 objections of mine. So if you've not yet started your side hustle, even if you're trying to start a side hustle with no money. So, for example, documenting your own experiences. And finally, even if you've no idea what skills, services, or ideas you could monetize into a side hustle. As I said, who's going to compete with you on your own personal experiences? Who's going to compete with you on the lessons that you have learned in documenting or showcasing your progress with your side hustle? And finally, E, explanations. So basically what your video is going to be about. I kind of gave you the bottom line up front, as I said earlier, but being at the mercy of the YouTube algorithm meant that I tried to give you just enough to want to carry on viewing, but not so much that you would think, right, I've got the key message after a minute, I'm going to stop watching. But what I can do now is condense this 10 to 15-ish minute video on YouTube into a short, into an Instagram reel. Potentially, I can use the script that I've written as an article for my personal development tier of my Patreon. But any way I could choose to go about it, I've now got one piece of content that can then be siphoned or sectioned into smaller pieces of content to fit the nuances of whatever social media platform I put it on. In January's first installment of Show Your Work, I mentioned about how I was going about finding my target market, and I explained the difficulties I was facing in simultaneously trying to appease these different markets. So, for example, I enjoy creating content for people who work with youth athletes, so PE teachers, strength and conditioning coaches of teams, sports coaches. I mentioned that I really enjoy personal development. I've read several books on the topic. And naturally, my background's in strength and conditioning with a master's in it. So already there's different platforms or there's different markets that would need to be communicated to differently. And that's what I've tried to do. And that's resulted in me doubling my Patreon subscription service. So since January's episode, I've created my Project 50 YouTube channel. I've created the Project 50 Instagram account to house my personal development content. I've gone back to an old social media account called Calisthenics Kids. Terrible name because nobody knows how to spell that word correctly. I've pitched my idea of creating content for youth athletic development coaches to Surf the Curve, who've fortunately now invested in my Patreon, and I'll be providing them coach education services. But it also means that their website can house my youth athletic development stuff, and it'll still give enough reference to my own content. So I'm leveraging both their bigger audience than mine. I'm leveraging the fact that their website or their content is specifically set up for youth athletic development coaches and parents and inclusivity. So I can write specifically towards that rather than, for example, posting on my own website about boxing, which is a massive passion of mine, self-development, athletic development content, and effectively watering down who exactly I'm trying to target as my key market. I've redesigned my Patreon tiers, so I now have a Patreon tier dedicated to self-development or personal development. I have a Patreon tier designed for youth athletic development coaches, either A, wanting to improve their understanding of how to train youth athletes, or B, providing them specific content that they themselves can use on their own websites to grow their own brand. I have created, or I'm in the process of creating, a boxing-only Patreon tier. So I already have several videos on strength and conditioning specific content for boxers. But as you can see, by trying to house all of this in one place, it can be a bit confusing as to who I'm trying to target. And the classic phrase, which I'm going to ruin trying to think up off the top of my head, but if you try and appeal to everybody, you actually appeal to nobody. Finally, I've started to build a second brain, and I'm using what Tiago Forte refers to as intermediate packets. So these are your kind of work in progress or work in process bits of information. Now, an example of this would be I shot a video at the gym of a core drop set of hanging knee raises. That could easily turn into an article on why hanging is really good for developing bodyweight strength in children. It could be turned into why hanging is really good at promoting or protecting boxers from shoulder issues. It could also be average to athletic content, which is another type of tier that I like creating content for. And it could explain how being able to hang from a bar is useful for grip strength, shoulder mobility, and just challenging the body in different ways. If you would like to hear any more about specific types of my content on March's installment of Show Your Work, then drop me a comment either on the YouTube video or reach out to me via platformtoperform@gmail.com. If you're still here, remember you can email me at platformtoperform@gmail.com, and I'll send you a free copy of Anti-Perfectionism, an ebook 1-2 to help you punch perfectionism in the face. Please like this video, subscribe to get me closer to the 1,000 subscriber mark, and if any of the content I've created or referenced has helped you, feel free to sign up to my Patreon using the link in the description of this video and podcast. By signing up, you'll receive exclusive access to my strength and conditioning content, my self-development content, or my youth athletic development content before anyone else, so long as you subscribe to the right tier. Thanks again for liking, subscribing, and watching. Catch you again in the next video.